Hello and welcome to this DC Velocity webinar, Digitizing Last Mile Deliveries, the impact on order to cash, driver performance, and customer service. Hi, I'm Dave Maloney. I'm the editorial director at DC Velocity. Thanks for joining us today. Smart devices are proliferating into every aspect of transportation and fleet operations, including regulatory and ELDs, routing, dispatch, and proof of delivery. There are significant benefits to leveraging mobile devices to digitize final mile deliveries with electronic proof of delivery. The benefits include improved customer service, driver productivity, reduced costs, accelerated cash flow, and much more. So in this webinar, we will hear from experts at Barcoding Inc., Descartes, and Samsung as they discuss the benefits of digitizing last mile deliveries. Our webinar today is sponsored by Barcoding Inc. Barcoding Inc. is a North American supply chain automation and mobile systems integrator that helps customers to become more efficient, accurate, and connected. For more information on Barcoding Inc. solutions and success stories, please visit barcoding.com. We have just a few announcements before we begin today. First, here are some tips to help you connect and to participate in this webinar. It's designed to be interactive between you and our presenters, so later in the program, we'll have a question and answer session to allow you to ask our presenters questions relevant to the topics that we discussed today. You can participate in the Q&A session by asking questions at any time during the webcast. You don't have to wait until the very end to get your questions to us. You can simply type your question into the text box that's located on the bottom left of the console, then click the Submit Question button, and we'll get to many of those questions during our presentation as we can. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event. If the slides are not advancing, please press the F5 key or Control-R on your keyboard to refresh your console. And we recommend that you disable any pop-up blockers. If you're experiencing any technical problems, please visit our webcast help guide by clicking on the help link that's below the media player. Now let's get on with our program. Please allow me to introduce today's presenters. Brian Hodgson is Senior Vice President, Industry Solutions at Descartes. Welcome, Brian, and can you tell us a little bit about Descartes and your role within the company?
Absolutely, Dave. Thanks very much. I'm Brian Hodgson. I head up the Industry Solutions team, which is really looking at how our customers use our solutions and get the best value from them. Bit of background on Descartes. Descartes is a publicly traded company, about $300 million in revenue. Really providing solutions in 6 areas. So today we're going to focus on a solution in the routing mobile telematics area, which is basically companies that have their own fleets or leverage private fleets for delivery. We have solutions in the transportation and visibility area for leveraging common carrier international logistics. And then a third area is around regulatory and security filings with government for international trade. We have a set of offerings for international freight customs brokers and freight forwarders for their back office, and also some trade intelligence solutions. So ensuring things like your denied party screening, tax and duty information is integrated well into your logistics from an international perspective. And then finally, a set of solutions around e-commerce and fulfillment, fast-growing area. All of those solutions are tied together through the Global Logistics Network. So today we're talking about digitizing the last mile. The Global Logistics Network really allows digitization of all of the parties in the logistics and the supply chain. So it really ties all our solutions together. And then in terms of the people, we're 1,500 strong across the world. And the common theme is we wake up every morning thinking about really how can we help our customers move some freight, and we get excited by things like barcodes and logistics language and those sort of things. Those are things that keep us excited to help our customers.
Thank you, Brian. Glad you're a part of our webcast today. Also with us is James McCardle. He's the Regional Sales Director for Channel Sales at Samsung. James, can you tell us briefly about Samsung and your role with the company?
Sure thing. Thanks, Dave, and hello, everyone. James McCardle, Regional Director for Samsung. I certainly hope there's a few folks out there that are familiar with Samsung and what we do. My specific team fits in as the mobile B2B team, supporting our end-user projects with tablets, phones, and wearables. And then we work with great partners like Barcoding and Descartes to deliver full end-to-end solutions. Thanks for having us. Look forward to today's discussion.
Great. Glad to have you with us. And also here today is Ken Curry, the Vice President of Business Development at Barcoding, Inc. Welcome, Ken. Can you tell us about Barcoding and, again, your role with the company?
Sure, Dave. So I'm VP of Business Development at Barcoding, and we are a supply chain automation and innovation company. We're also a systems integrator that focuses on mobile systems, and we have offices throughout the United States and Canada. Our goal is to help our customers be more efficient, accurate, and connected.
Thank you, Ken. I will now turn it over to you to begin the presentation today.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Dave. And thank you, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for joining us. On today's webinar, we plan to define and describe last-mile digitization. While discussing the challenges and opportunities there within, we will outline a how-to approach, where we hope to answer why it matters by showing meaningful real-life customer outcomes. We'll wrap up by describing our engagement process and by answering your questions. So let's talk about the last mile, and don't worry, this isn't a COVID webinar. We've all stood witness to the transformation driven by e-commerce and retail disruption. These alone have exacerbated existing dilemmas, from commercial driver shortages to evolving distribution models, and the present reality that more of the landed cost for goods are being absorbed in the final mile than ever before. The pandemic, to a large extent, has made the future a present reality, and the last mile is ground zero. I read an article yesterday written by Andrew Herpage of Nolan Transportation, and he said that as of June this year, online sales are up 76% year over year. How relevant then is it to distribution and transportation logistics that customer expectations continue to rise? Think about it. We now expect instant access to all things at all times with complete transparency. When we place an online order, we expect to see an order confirmation, picking notice, shipping notice, and then an ETA within 2 hours of our doorstep. How exceptional. To provide a better customer experience for our customers, if we manage a private fleet, or for our customers' customers, if we're logistics service providers, then we need better data. We need to capture more accurate data, and we need to use that data more effectively. Today, last mile logistics is just as much about the transfer of goods as it is about the movement of information. James, what's been going on with fleet technology investments?
Thanks, Ken. What we've seen is much of the fleet technology obviously has been impacted by the FMCSA ELD mandate back in 2017. We certainly saw a huge uptick in our businesses as organizations were trying to come into compliance as a result of the mandate. It really presented a great opportunity for Samsung to secure a solid market share of in-cab technology. We also witnessed a shift in the move from the purpose-built devices and proprietary screens to our Android tablets. That's provided a couple benefits to our customers. We've seen the average cost per unit driven down, more computing power, and better connectivity for transportation end users. Then from an ongoing support perspective, cost to repair a purpose-built device versus the off-the-shelf tablet is a huge savings to our customers. Samsung has also seen an opportunity to leverage our devices beyond ELD for a better integrated delivery and fleet management app stack. And finally, based on our customer feedback requirements, we've designed our products on the need to now handle multiple workflows beyond ELD. Allow me to overview some of these relevant features. So back in 2017, in November of 2017, we introduced the Tab Active 2 in a Wi-Fi configuration only. Shortly thereafter, we brought out the LTE version in March of 2018. We now also have a Tab Active Pro in a 10-inch form factor that shares all these same feature sets. These tablets were built for B2B use cases from the ground up, starting with a military standard 810G certification. These are our only tablets with a removable battery that allows for max uptime. In future iterations, we'll be able to configure the device inside a cab without the battery to prevent overheating, leveraging the native power of the truck. The high-resolution camera supports 1D and 2D image-based scanning, which can help with device consolidation to replace purpose-built scanning devices. The Pogo pins allow for optimal power data transfer rather than using the USB port, which is the single biggest point of failure in any device. Numerous partner mount and scanning configurations take advantage of these pins. Finally, IP68 and wet touch mode is an ideal feature set for last mile proof of delivery because you can use the device in any condition, even with gloves on. As you can see, these are drastically different feature sets that you'd see from consumer-grade tablet from Samsung and built specific for B2B use cases. Brian, I'll now turn it over to you to explain what is digitizing the last mile.
Thanks very much. And so just taking a step back, thinking about what does good look like in terms of digitizing the last mile? And it's really about eliminating or minimizing paper and automating processes or providing guidance to help the user execute those processes more effectively. So thinking about, look, your drivers are coming into the depot in the morning, so pre-trip activities they may have to do in terms of planning their route, maybe vehicle inspection, those sort of things. Out on the road, keeping track of what's happening, which deliveries have happened, are things at risk, how do those get managed? Deliveries at customers, the process to execute those, make sure that there's no mistakes and errors on delivery and there's a good customer experience. And then finally, return to the depot at the end of the day. So those are all areas of opportunity to digitize and huge opportunities for value to create. Now, as digitization becomes, it's a fairly sort of broad word. A lot of people use it. So we're hopefully going to get into very specific use cases of how this can apply both on the value, and there's certainly some challenges. So Ken, maybe you could talk a bit about the challenges people see in looking at implementing last mile delivery.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. A number of adoption challenges could be articulated here, but for simplicity, let's group them into 3 C's. I would say cost, culture, and compliance. From a cost perspective, there remains a perception that there's a lack of clear savings and that automation is expensive to purchase and risky to implement. We work with our enterprise customers to develop ROI and TCO models. Why? Because it can get complex. From a cultural perspective, we're talking about user adoption and change management, as well as expectation management issues. This is where a 30-day rollout becomes an 18-month half-baked deployment that gets serious management scrutiny. In talking with the client last week, they shared that their 1099 drivers had near 100% adoption with their image capture / their delivery notification or delivery management solution, while their W-2 drivers really only approached 50%. Why? Culture. And then compliance. Most folks know about Title 49, Subtitle B in Chapter 3, which is the FMCSA ELD rule, but what about lesser known rule sets from Title 49, like Chapter 5 or 6, that focus on hazmat or product indexing and labeling, to name a couple? Furthermore, what if customers are still married to paper-based workflows? So at Barcoding Incorporated, our tagline is to be efficient, accurate, and connected. So looking at the value streams from that lens, let's start with efficiency. Here it's about increasing cash flow and minimizing revenue leakage, increased driver performance, increased operational performance. Efficiency is not just about cost takeout, it provides the necessary conditions for productivity and growth. From an accuracy perspective, reducing risks and mistakes, the downstream ramifications of which, if you think about an invoicing mistake, can be staggering in both cost and time. But we're also talking about providing greater chain of custody and inventory control. This is about internal visibility. Finally, connectivity should facilitate continual improvement in customer service, which should be a fulcrum of your business strategy. Connectivity is all about your relationship with your customer and their customers. Delivering information with integrity is no longer a competitive advantage, it is table stakes. Brian, how do you get started? Do you recommend a big bang or an iterative approach to digitization?
Yeah, it really is. Best approach, what we see is a phased approach. And we think about it in terms of crawl, walk, run. And there's value at every stage. I mean, boiling the ocean, as you Ken highlighted, that often will turn into a fairly big project that drags on and then gets questioned. Whereas with a phased approach, making sure that you have the value lined up and achieve value at each stage that's going to help succeed and fund the next stage. So in the crawl stage, really about creating visibility end to end, and we'll drill in a bit more on each of these. But with better visibility, that's going to give improved customer service, efficiency better for the drivers, operational efficiency for the dispatch team and customer support. As you next go to the walk stage, there's opportunity to automate more workflows. And we'll step through some concrete examples there. And then lastly is run, where you're really streamlining the whole order to cash process. So, with a phased approach, again, identifying there's value in every bucket and identifying where to start and tying that back to the values is critical. And again, working with customers and identifying that is really important to make sure that that project goes well and the value expected gets achieved. So in the create real-time visibility, we've picked out 3 areas to think about. One is just dispatching, trip management, talked about earlier, as your drivers come in, get their routes, thinking about their day and getting going. So improving that process and creating visibility. Next, they're out on the road, getting visibility to what's happening. And then lastly, they've made some deliveries. So let's drill in on a few examples of each of these. So by providing that mobile solution and doing electronic dispatch, the drivers have a much better, clear view of what stops they need to do, navigation to routes. I was talking to one of the customers that's implementing this last month, alcohol beverage distribution. And their drivers, prior to this, came in. There was a stack of papers. They sequenced their own route, and it was working. But the opportunity to provide the sequence, the performance and the time that they take to do that, from a clerical standpoint at the beginning of the day, but then even performance on the route in terms of the number of miles they drive, the number of stops they can cover, is impacted. And it's hard to measure and know, where is the opportunity for improvement. And then another example would be, let's say, we have a customer that does HVAC. They do preventative maintenance visits, and let's say there's an emergency call in from a customer. How does that get communicated out to, one of the technicians who might be close and could go do that emergency call? That can get communicated out. So with a mobile solution in the driver's hand, they get visibility to what they should be doing. If there's changes or maybe an order gets canceled, that pops up so they get notifications. It just streamlines their process. And then, of course, it feeds data back into the dispatch team and the customer service team. So from a customer service and operational performance, now you have clear views of what's happening out in the field, which deliveries are on time, which ones are at risk. And that team now spends a lot less time phoning, following up, and doing more clerical things. They can really focus on the issues and do more of a manage by exception. So that's sort of real-time things out in the operational day and improving that process. As it also dramatically reduces customer calls inbound because you can be more proactive if there's an issue, letting them know ahead of time. And then collecting this data long-term for improvements in analytics. So which routes, which drivers, which stops have maybe some wrong assumptions or opportunities for training and improvement, those sort of things. So being able to assess plan versus actual really provides value at multiple levels, both what's happening right now and then long-term continuous improvement. And then in terms of providing that customer experience, Ken, you'd mentioned the expectation of notifications, and we call it sort of the Uber experience of things coming to end customer getting visibility. And it's an expectation that customers have, but it also provides value. So a couple of examples. A personal example is earlier this year we had to get a new freezer, and by providing that experience. To me, knowing that the driver was coming for that home delivery and getting 15-minute updates as to when they were going to arrive allowed me to really plan my day much better. Open up, they had to deliver it into the basement, so open that up and it's just a much better experience. And so that moment of delivery as part of the customer experience, certainly consumer world, is becoming more and more important. Another example would be construction site delivery. So maybe delivering some equipment to a construction site that maybe needs to get coordinated with other project work to, if that gets delivered sort of outside the window or delayed, that the cost of that, given the downstream resources, whether it's a project team, other equipment that might need to get engaged, becomes very expensive. So really providing proactive notifications, real-time visibility where that customer shipment can provide huge value from a customer standpoint and a cost standpoint. And then the last area in the crawl is being able to do image capture. And again, here we've picked a few examples. On the left, it's, look, we're delivering a set of shingles to a construction site. Not uncommon for someone to think they're in the wrong place, pick up the forklift, move them. The person who's expecting them for something goes to look for them, can't find it. So with image capture, it captures the location and the time, so it's very clear that, yep, this was delivered on time, it was delivered to the location, and here's the proof. Another use case in the middle is showing some damage to a driveway. So one of our customers does a lot of delivery for roofing to homes and buildings for new roofs. And one of the complaints they got was, look, they bring in some heavy equipment. Look, you've damaged the driveway, and that results in they're paying claims, those sort of things. So by taking a picture ahead of time and highlighting, look, this was already there, they dramatically reduced those types of complaints and customer satisfaction issues. And then the last is a service company, going and picking up, in this case, some gas containers and identifying that they're damaged, and feeding that back to the depot, so knowing what's coming in and maybe some upstream processes that might be prep and plan that better. So those are a few examples for the crawl stage. Again, really creating visibility on that process from the time the depot out to the customer and back at the end of the day. Second phase is really about automating workflows, improving how either completely automating or providing guidance to ensure best practices and the proper collection of data. So examples we're going to provide here are safety inspection, maybe workflow that a driver is going to do at a particular site, and then lastly, electronic proof of delivery. So for inspection, or DVIR, if it's, look, beginning of the day, doing an inspection of the vehicle, could be the cab, the trailer, maybe there's some additional equipment, really automating that process. And that could be for regulatory, on the commercial side, regulatory requirements, or it might just be for your own check if there's different drivers using the vehicles day to day, providing that maintenance check, capturing that flat tire ahead of time, knowing maybe it was either repaired or not repaired by the next day. And this can both increase the compliance, provide that information back to the compliance team, but also reduce maintenance costs. So if there is an issue, let's say maybe that doesn't, maybe isn't critical for the day, but start to, as I said, flat tire, that doesn't get repaired. The next day someone takes it out and gets, it actually, or low tire, I should say, they get a flat tire. That's going to impact your customer service. It's going to impact all of the stops on that route. So being able to go and in a simple way have the driver do this check in the morning is going to ensure best practice, get the information you need to enhance the maintenance program and safety for your drivers. The next level is we're delivering some either service at a customer, things like lawn care, those types of things, or delivering product. And being able to set up the driver workflow, so what's expected for that driver to do. So large, big box retailer delivering appliances and TVs, those sort of things. This could be set up on a type of stop, type of order, type information. So I could be delivering a TV that needs installation services. I could be doing inside delivery or outside delivery. signatures required, those types of things. So being able to configure and have a workflow to drive that is going to, again, improve best practices, but also eliminate errors. So if you think about it doing in a paper world, writing things down, it's easy to miss things and create errors that both are going to impact customer satisfaction, but then when that paperwork gets back to the depot at the end of the day, is going to create additional issues in terms of cost and those sort of things. Now the workflow can also be set up on, if everything goes smoothly, generally that's probably the least issue, but again, you want those best practices and good data collection. But it's really fun to get exceptions that cause the extra work. So the product's damaged, it gets refused, wrong product. So what's the workflow, what's expected in those scenarios? Maybe take a picture of the damage, those sort of things, and again, really capture the information effectively so that it can be communicated back and addressed. And again, that paperwork going back, if it's on the paper side, is inefficient, but then it introduces a possibility for additional errors on data entry on the back office side. And then lastly, in the walk stage is automating the proof of the billing and electronic proof of delivery. So being able to, and there's a couple of scenarios here. In this year, we're showing, capturing signature. Certainly in the current climate, we've seen a number of customers sort of change that workflow to do an image capture and an electronic mailing of the invoice. So there's flexibility in how to do that, but it's really, again, capturing this. And this can provide accelerated, cash flow. So by being able to, at that point of delivery, deliver the final invoice updated with, whether changes have happened, is going to allow that, revenue recognition and can add cut a couple of days out of the cycle time from a cash flow rather than taking that paperwork back, entering it into a system, sending out those invoices, a day or two later. And then lastly, let's focus on sort of that run stage. You've now gotten visibility, automated some workflows across, and it's really the next level of automation. So things like product scanning, being able to manage exceptions on a pallet management standpoint, and payment. So with by product scanning, this again could be starting with, as you're leaving the depot, scanning products that go onto the truck, making sure that it's the right things going on the right truck, so that you don't get to a stop, there's missing product, those type of things. So accuracy of inventory on the truck sort of at the start of the day. And then as the driver's going through the route, being able to scan that product. So an example might be delivering food into a restaurant, and scanning to make sure the right product's there. You have a case of porterhouse steaks. By accident, you leave you drop off the case of chuck steaks. 3 stops later, that maybe or you left. It's actually in this case you've left the porterhouse. 3 stops later, you're supposed to be delivering the porterhouse. You don't have it. That causes an exception, a claim. The person who got them in the restaurant earlier in the route may not say you gave us the wrong thing. So really providing that accurate delivery at a product level is going to increase accuracy. And then there's other scenarios in the service area, thinking about test labs and test equipment. So picking up medical test results from doctors' offices, delivering them to labs, being able to, again, scan those barcodes, typically serialized, to make sure that they're going, the chain of custody is clear. Again, delivering them the wrong things, getting them mixed up is obviously not acceptable. So providing that line level scanning, whether it's product or service, can create much better accuracy, minimize errors, cut costs and claims and regulatory issues. Now, just continuing on in terms of, let's say the food example, you may be delivering a pallet of, a couple of pallets of food to your customer. As they look at that, these 2 cases are damaged, or we want to open up a case and take it's a case of 24 things of ketchup. They really want to accept 20. So being able to break that out and deliver and then reconcile that delivery with the invoice at that point. Again, huge value to do that rather than writing it up on a piece of paper, delivering it back, and reconciling it in the back office. Again, introduction for inefficiencies and huge errors, billing errors that then are going to cost in terms of accounts receivable, days sales outstanding, those types of things. And then lastly, being able to collect payment. So improving that cash flow at that point. So collecting checks, reconciling that against open invoices at the customer. So checks, cash, those types of things, being able to collect that back real time and get that reconciled in the back office. So let's look at a few concrete examples, specific examples. I've given some, given the discussions and customers that we've worked with in the past, and I picked these three, really to show sort of a couple dimensions. One, U.S. Foods, obviously, one of the largest food service companies. So large enterprise company, Ideal Supply, sort of small, mid-size, sort of about 100 trucks. And then a services company, global IT services company. So the dimensions of size and product or service, finalizing, digitizing that last mile can really apply across all of those dimensions. So with U.S. Foods, again, prior to digitizing and introducing the EPOD, very inefficient paper-based process. Some of the things we've talked about in terms of 3 sheets of paper, dropping it, marking up exceptions, having credits where maybe they could have delivered the right thing, but later from a customer standpoint, they claim and say, we didn't get this case of meat or what have you, and being able to really not have great evidence to prove otherwise. So being able to provide those, having to provide the customer credits, and then also just providing much better automation on at point of delivery workflow. So really, a good example of some of the value prop and use cases we've talked about. Ideal Supply, similar in terms of some of the benefits. Again, smaller company, 100 trucks, and in a different industry. So providing components, wholesale distribution of electrical, industrial components. But again, trying to minimize and end up with delivering the right things, being able to get visibility to where the trucks are, customer service, and really minimize exceptions that cause customer satisfaction issues. And then the third example is a global IT company. They provide really data storage, both of paper products, so retrieval of secure, confidential paper information, as well as digital. So picking that up, taking it off site, and in this case, one of the key drivers is that chain of custody. So being able to scan, make sure from a regulatory standpoint that that confidential information has been removed from the site, it's stored off site. If it needs to get retrieved and restored back on, that the right data sets, right documents are restored. Now, one of the interesting things from a workflow standpoint here, flexible workflow, is they have some unique requirements that require only certain authorized people can sign for that delivery. So there's an example of some advanced workflow based on this particular customer and stop and equipment type of service they're doing. Only certain people can sign, and it has to be an authorization code and those things. So some flexible workflow to ensure that compliance that some of their customers have. So just to summarize the phases, it's really about starting by creating visibility. And look, we have 6 or 7 bullets under each. Doesn't mean that each of these things has to be implemented. I'd encourage you to assess, where the value is going to come, and starting with potentially a subset of these to get going. But creating visibility, with that visibility allows you opportunity to ask, okay, where's the workflow? What things are best to automate to start with? And then finally, getting more advanced in terms of scanning and more line item detail, automation and visibility with the order to cash process. And again, every stage of this will provide value. And the key is to really tie that, whether it's customer service, whether it's reduced miles and fleet cost savings, reduced time, productivity for the dispatch team and customer service, really going through and quantifying and aligning that value to some of the capabilities and the phases here is critical to a successful project. Now, just taking a step back, I talked about the broader solution sets from a Descartes perspective. Within the routing, so companies that have their own fleet or private dedicated fleet, we talk mostly today really on the mobile delivery manager on the far right, but we do have extensive capabilities and solutions for really advanced optimization as well as dispatch and execution. So we'll do some sessions on those as well. Look forward to that in the future. And Ken, maybe you could take us through sort of how to think about implementation and how we work together to ensure the customer success.
Sure, Brian. I look forward to hearing you in the future. So this represents an expectation of our relationship threshold for clients and prospective clients. It starts with connecting with people and building trust. So we question to understand business problems and your desired outcomes. We leverage our PPT approach to understand your processes, your people, both employees and customers, before we recommend technology. And then we build. And that's a collaborative process with you and us, based on best practices forged by our experience, our experts, and our ecosystem. We often partner with Samsung and Descartes on solution architecture, not just because they have industry-leading products and solutions, but like Simon Sinek says in the book Start With Why, we do business with people that believe what we believe. Then we deploy, often with an iterative approach like crawl, walk, run, but grounded with a solid project plan and project management. We handle. As a technology integrator and managed services provider, we expect to take burdens off your desk. Automation should make things easier. But the solution to old problems often creates new ones. With you, we're focused on continuous improvement. And we commit to explore. Expectations like business change. Here we look to make sure that what we're delivering is still at a high level, and we seek ways to help you capture additional value streams to maximize your technology utility while managing costs. And finally, let's grow. We seek to adapt solutions and evolve your customer experience. Together with Descartes and Samsung, we are delivering some of the most complex and meaningful last-mile delivery solutions in the market today. So, if you'd like to connect, certainly reach out to us at info@barcoding.com. Or if you email me and you'd like Brian Hodgson's personal cell phone number, or if you have a cracked screen that you'd like to have James McCardle handle, I'll provide his personal address as well. Just kidding. But we'd love to connect with you, and thank you so much for your attention. At this point in time, I'll turn it back over to Dave for questions.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Nice job on that presentation. It is time to go into the question and answer session of our presentation today, and there is still time for you to get your questions in. Again, just type them into the question box and hit the submit. We'll get to many of those questions as we can while time permits. First question is coming in from John, and he asked, how is the carrier stop locations kept from being visible from the client who is trying to track their shipment? Carriers are often carrying high-value goods, such as Samsung products, LG, liquor, cannabis, and that sort of thing, he says, and they would not want their drivers' locations in a near public format. So how would those locations be visible for the client? Or would those
and I can start that.
Be visible?
Yeah,
Please.
I can take a cut at that first, Dave. So there's really a few options. One is it could be the notifications can be text, so it's really only going to the consignee. So it's in that case, it's not visible. It could be There could be a link that sends, you know, an encoded link that's unique to that shipment that's only sent to that person as well. So there's a couple of options there to make sure that that's private. And typically it's also done really on that leg that's between, you know, the stop before the consignee and the consignee, so they get that, again, that sort of Uber experience. But I think, you know, looking at that and the options and the security and which things to turn on would be, you know, how we'd work with the customer to ensure that that's not an issue.
All right, very good, thank you. You were talking about scanning of product during the presentation, and Scott is wanting to ask if it's scanning by taking a picture with the device, or does it require an attached barcode reader of some sort?
Yeah, I can answer that one, Brian, if you'd like, or David. You know, so go ahead.
Yes, go, please.
Sure. So the answer is we can do both, and it really depends on the workflow. So for high volume scanning, we could look at attachable. If we're talking about to a device like we talked about today, there are attachable models that would facilitate lots of scans, lots of scans per stop or lots of scans per, in a day. It really depends on the workflow though. So what we seek to do is just to understand the process, right, and understand the user experience. Once we understand the process and the user experience, then we'll design a workflow that's fit to purpose. We do this together with Descartes, and that the net is the answer is both, or potentially something else. Brian, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that's right. I mean, again, it's really that flexibility and thinking of stepping through the use case of what's the best solution.
Very good, thank you. You gave the example during the presentation about making restaurant deliveries, including a porterhouse to one and chuck roast to another. So this person is asking, instead of reconciling, should the check on the pallet ID to the order be done at the point of delivery, so you would not be delivering the porterhouse instead of the chuck roast?
Yeah, and I probably messed that up in my explanation. So I think there's a couple of use cases. So I'll try to clarify, but absolutely scanning, the barcode scan is going to help resolve that. So if you're doing a paper process and you're delivering that product, then it's easy to mix up the porterhouse and the chuck roast. By scanning a case, you're going to catch that at point of delivery for sure. So that's one use case where you're doing item barcode level scanning, which is going to reduce the missed deliveries, claims, those things. Second use case would be I have a pallet of information, a pallet of product delivering, and maybe there's one of the cases is damaged, so the customer's, look, I don't want to take that case. So you're taking that back onto the truck, like that. The pallet scan will capture everything in the pallet and proof of delivery, but then you want to take that one case off, reconcile the invoice at that point. So a couple different use cases, but in both cases, the barcode scanning advanced capabilities are going to help, improve that order to cash and claims and customer satisfaction.
Thank you. Our next question is for James at Samsung. You were talking about the rugged pallets that you offer, and again, this is kind of a question based on life cycle costs. What's the general life cycle of those rugged tablets that you mentioned earlier in the presentation versus some of the consumer-grade tablets that are available on the market?
Sure thing, great question. So the product life cycle for the B2B SKUs are much different than the consumer SKUs. On the consumer side, we can refresh those at least a year time frame, or maybe longer, depending on how well that device is doing, but a minimum of 1 year commitment on the consumer grade. Whereas the B2B, we commit to at least 3 years of product availability and 5 years of security maintenance releases. Throughout that life cycle, we do guarantee 2 major OS upgrades, potentially more, but a minimum of 2 of OS upgrades and then 5 years of security SMRs. So vastly different from the consumer side.
Very good, thank you. Our next question comes from Don. It says, can you confirm that the truck routing navigation is done in real time, In other words, the navigation system accounts for traffic congestion and what else the driver may encounter. Is that done in real time?
Yeah, and I can start this. So there's so what we're talking about here is primarily the mobile device, and yet it has real time. But also there is there's usually a routing engine on the backside. Now they don't necessarily have to be, ideally they're all from Descartes, but the backside routing, providing that continuous optimization, accommodating for things like traffic, missed stops, yeah, absolutely, that's real time, and adding new orders, so same day orders, those types of things, real time. A lot of that sort of, I'll call it brain power, is on the routing side, but certainly mobile is connected in real time for sure.
Thank you. Mark has a question. He's asking, obviously, with the advent of COVID-19, a lot of document signatures are being done electronically rather than an actual signature. Are you seeing an uptake in that? And if so, how is that being accomplished on your devices and your processes?
Yeah, and I can start. I don't know, Ken, if you want to add to this, but so yeah, we are definitely seeing an uptick of that, both eliminating paper, also eliminating sign on screen. So signing on, handing a tablet back and forth or a device back and forth for the customer sign also is a request that we were seeing try to avoid. So what's getting replaced with that is getting an image capture, taking an image of the delivery, and then electronically sending that resulting invoice delivery note to the customer.
All right, very good. Brian, you had talked in the presentation about the phased approach for deployment, crawl, walk, run. What's a typical deployment time for that kind of an approach?
Yeah, and my answer might be a bit, it's a range, but it could be a number of weeks, 4 to 6 weeks to get going, up to months. And a lot of it's going to depend on scope of what focus, size of the project, how many are in the fleet, maybe there's different segments or different workflows for the fleet serving 2 different segments, so that requires different things. So there are a fair number of variables that impact that. Certainly from a scoping standpoint, thinking about the data and the integration of the back-end systems, data quality is really important to have a successful project. And then having the right alignment on the project teams, priorities, strong project manager on both the customer side and the vendor side is important to keep that executing well and moving forward.
Okay, very good.
Ken,
again, we remind
some other thoughts.
Oh, I'm sorry, please. Yes, if anyone wants to add to that.
Well, I think you're right, Brian. It really has to do with alignment, right? And to quote Dwight Eisenhower, plans are nothing and planning is everything, right? So, and a plan is only as good as its execution. So, executive sponsorship, strong project management office on the customer side, along with vendor alignment, will really facilitate fantastic deployments. And hopefully, the reality is that this is dynamic, and continual improvement will happen over over the course of a deployment, and when you stand up a solution over time.
Very good. We do want to remind our listeners we have a few more minutes yet. We can still have time to take your questions, so go ahead and type those into the box, and we'll get to just a few more here as we go. We had talked a moment ago about proof of delivery and electronic signatures. What if someone is requiring a printed paper copy for their business processes? What impact does that have on the ability to leverage a digital proof of delivery?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because we'll have customers who say, look, and there's at least a couple of use cases here. One is our customers require paper, and another one is regulatory reasons we need paper. And let's say, so the customer needs paper, so that's fine. Doesn't mean that paper has to go back to the depot and, as someone who's running the fleet, have that for everyone. So in that case, it might be there's printers. And again, there's per customer, per stop workflow, like for this particular customer, again, getting that reconciled delivery note at point of delivery and then printing at that point is one option. Another option is getting it, feeding it back, and then it could get automatically generated out of the back-end system. So even though the customer needs paper, there's still huge value in eliminating paper on the on the fleet side. And then similar on a regulatory standpoint, look, there still may be paper required, but things like scanning the barcodes to improve proper delivery, getting visibility to where the trucks are, being proactive in the customer service, with alerts, notifications, or calls. All those things are still very valuable, even if there is some paper that's required from a regulatory standpoint.
Let me just add to that, Brian, since Brian's modest. Systems like Descartes are really will allow you can conform Descartes to your workflow and your use cases, right? So systems like and this is what differentiates kind of systems like Descartes to make them. This is why they're enterprise systems. They're configurable, right? And the workflow will change over time, just like routes and territories change over time. And certain customers will will have discrete functions that are maybe different than the functions for other routes. So one of the reasons we love partnering with Descartes is because their workflow is configurable and customer directed.
Very good. The next question, we run a fleet that services two customer segments, wholesale distribution with more regular customer deliveries, as well as to end customers. There are different steps that the drivers take for each segment, and also with end customers based on the product. So how would you suggest you handle the different types of requirements in that kind of a scenario?
Yeah, and I can start there. So again, to me, it goes back to thinking about, look, what are you going to digitize, and are there differences in terms of processes, steps at the, on the consumer versus the wholesale side, and being able to configure that into the solution. So, and it could be intermingled. Either if there's two separate fleets, they're going to have separate workflows, but even within that, they could have different workflows, or you may end up with another scenario would be you're doing those intermingled deliveries, but again, being able to configure the workflow and what steps are required and is important to provide that. So just map out the processes, the things that can be digitized, and then make sure that gets automated in the mobile solution.
Very good. Gentlemen, any final thoughts you'd like to add before we close today?
No, there's been great questions. It's always fun to get those at the end, and hopefully everyone took at least one or two pieces of information back to their business that they can think about to start down the journey. Great.
And if you didn't have time to get a question in, we encourage you to go ahead and still type that into the box, and we'll collect those, and someone will get back to you with an answer shortly. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for all your time today, for a very informative presentation. We also thank Barcoding, Inc. for their sponsorship. You'll see a link on your screen for more information of how you can find out more about Barcoding, Inc. solutions and services. Just go to barcoding.com also for more information. Shortly after our live event, we'll send you an email reminder so that you can access this presentation on demand. You can view it again or share with a colleague. Thanks for all of you sharing your time today. We know it's valuable. Your time is valuable, and we hope that you walked away with some good ideas that will help you to better manage your own supply chains. For all of us at DC Velocity, I'm David Maloney. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day.